insurance is that it's the one product that you buy that you hope you never use.
Yeah. You hate paying for it, but you have to pay for it just because you never know sometimes. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to another R to the J podcast. If you guys don't know what we do here, we get you everyday entrepreneur, small business, trades in the Southeast Texas area. And if you guys like what we're doing over here, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. It sure helps the channel grow. So with that being said, today's special guest is Brandon. Brandon's with 409 Insurance. So how you doing today, Brandon?
I'm better than I've ever been. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's a Friday,
Yay.
ready for the weekend.
Absolutely.
Have a couple of drinks. My cousin from El Salvador is here. We're gonna do barbecue on Sunday.
Oh, and where's my invite? Am I coming?
Yeah, all my guests, you guys want to come. If I actually put this video out in time.
Awesome.
Okay, but the reason why I asked you out here because I seen you. You know, you like a couple of my posts on Facebook and stuff. I was
Yeah,
kind of
you're
interested.
doing some great stuff
Yeah,
here,
appreciate it, man. So I was like, okay, maybe I see he's look like he's busy, you know. So I was like, let me get him on, you know. He look like somebody who will be interesting to talk to and see what he got to offer the people.
Try.
Yeah. So I like to ask my guests because we're everyday people, so we're trying to see, okay, who is this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who is the guest? You know what I mean? Because you know it's not Joe Rogan, it's not these
Yeah.
other people. You know what I mean? So they don't know who it is. So I like to ask my guests. Okay, as for you, who is Brandon?
Who is Brandon? Well, I'm an insurance agent. I'm the voice and face of insurance in Southeast Texas.
Nice.
But no, seriously, I'm just everyday guy. I have been in and around the insurance industry for a handful of years. Prior to that, I was a tour director.
Okay.
So I used to bring people on camping and hiking and backpacking tours to national parks across the country.
Oh, nice. Where like
Up
just anywhere? Really?
Yellowstone, Yosemite. I've been in and around most of the national parks on the West Coast.
Oh, okay.
And then would drive cross country to do Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, Big Bend in West Texas. You
Yeah.
know, basically just we would do cross country tours.
Yeah. Well, I might need to hook me up or let me know which spots to go to because I'm a big time hiker. I like going hiking and stuff.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
That. So that's the really I'm into. So are you born and raised in Southeast Texas?
In a way, my family's from this area for 4 or 5 generations. But my parents moved to Houston in the 80s, and so I actually grew up northeast of Houston, a town called Humble. It's in the
Humble?
Tascasita, Kingwood area.
Okay, yeah.
And so we bounced around there, and I actually moved down here 2005, 2006, whenever Rita hit.
Oh, okay.
Hurricane
Yeah.
Rita hit. I was in Colorado doing a camping tour and called my mom, who they still lived over Tascasita at the time, and she said, "You need to come home. We have 19 members of your family evacuated from here in Southeast Texas over to their house." Rita came through and just tore up everything.
Yeah.
So moved here, lived in a small camper out in front of my grandmother's house in Groves for 5 or 6 months while we rebuilt her house.
Yeah.
And then just never left.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, pretty much same thing happened to us. Well, not with Rita. It was more like with Harvey.
Yeah.
That's the one. Our family. I heard a lot of people that I knew. But also, I was gonna ask you. Okay, so how and why did you get into the insurance business?
Well, prior to becoming an agent, I was an adjuster, and so I worked the other side of the house. You know, somebody would have a claim if they had a fire or a flood or something like that. I would come out and do the estimating for what the repairs would be.
Okay.
And prior to that, I had a construction and restoration company that would do the repairs. So got into construction, someone said, "Hey, you should be an adjuster." So I got into adjusting. Then that led me to be a disaster inspector with FEMA. So I traveled the country after hurricanes to estimate damages for people that didn't have insurance or the wrong kind or not enough. By the time it got to me, they were having a really bad time. You know, they had they had major damage, because that's, what happens when FEMA comes in. They only come in after a, major disaster, and so folks would have, tens of thousands or more dollars worth of damages. I'd come in and estimate it, and then work their case, and did that for a handful of years, and just got basically tired of living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun for a while when you first start off, but then after you start doing it for, like, let's say even a year, 2 years,
Yeah.
maybe it starts getting bored. But it just depends on, I guess, what you're doing as well too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I imagine doing that type of job, you probably have to deal with a lot of disgruntled
Big
customers. So
Well, and with that in particular, I was half therapist,
Yeah.
because people are having a real bad time. I'd say all the time, if you saw me on your doorstep, it meant you were having a very, very bad day, because everything had gone wrong. And so I liked helping people. I did a few thousand cases with them, and it was a great experience. But I've got 3 kids. I couldn't be gone like that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I came back from my last deployment, I said, I've got to do something that will keep me here in town.
Yeah.
And I looked into a couple of different adjusting jobs, but basically all of the companies want you to be on catastrophe duty, to where you can leave at a moment's notice to go work a tornado or a hailstorm, or follow the work. And I just couldn't do that. So I looked around for an agency that had an opening for a sales position as a licensed agent, and found the one that I'm at, and really love the company that I'm representing. And it's cool because I'm bringing all those experiences that I had in the past on the other side of the house. What happens after it, and being able to tell those stories and kind of go through people's policies to make sure that they have the coverage that they think they have, or if there are any gaps, any holes, that I can help them to fill that. Because by the time the adjusters come out, it's too late. You
Yeah.
can't change the contract. You can't change your policy once the claim's been filed. So it's been a really great it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm not much of a salesperson. I'm dealing with being on the other side of the house, and I tend to dive into the policies and show them what they have. And I've had a lot of my customers a lot of my clients tell me that they've never had their agent go through everything in such detail before. And,
yeah, because I can imagine when people get the policy, they're kind of reading it and they're overwhelmed with just the language as well too. You don't know what it's saying. It's almost, you have to be a lawyer to understand what it's saying.
And it's a 30, 40 page contract, and it looks like it contradicts itself. See paragraph C, subsection B, it refers back and forth to itself. First day of adjusting school, they told us there's only 2 times that people read their policy. That's the day they sign it and the day they make a claim. But they never read it when they sign it. So the first time they bring out this big contract and they say, okay, is this thing covered? That's the first time they're ever looking at it. And then it just looks like Greek. It doesn't mean anything to them. So to me, that's really my focus as an agent, is to really be their advocate, more so than just a salesperson like selling a product.
Yeah, but also recommend to the clients to make sure you read the policy as well.
Do your best, yeah.
You try, just at least skim through it a little bit,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Find out what your exclusions are. Find out what, and depending on what type of policy it is. If it's an auto policy, they're usually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It's usually only a couple of pages. But when it comes to a homeowner's policy, that is something to sit down with your agent with and say, hey, what does all this mean? Show me what these exclusions mean.
Yeah.
Show me what all of these policies cover. What does it not cover? So that you know that what you're paying for every month is what you expect.
Yeah, because home policies, I think you have to get your separate windstorm policy, then also flooding as well too. I think that's separate as well too.
Part of living down here on the coast, Tier 1 counties in Texas are considered all the counties that touch the Gulf. So from here all the way down to Brownsville, all of those counties, vast majority of insurance companies exclude wind out of their policies because roofs are one of the most expensive things on a home to repair after a storm.
Yeah.
So we end up with a windstorm through TWIA, TWIA, Texas windstorm. And so, yeah, every homeowner policy ends up being 3 separate policies. You've got the homeowner's policy that covers fire, lightning, theft, a handful of different things, depending on how the policy's written. Then there's a windstorm that covers just the wind and the tornadoes and the hurricanes and hail. And then we've got a flood policy.
Yeah.
That's a total separate policy. So there ends up being 3 separate policies, 3 separate companies. You move an hour north and you don't have to have those 3 separate policies. It ends up being just the homeowner's policy and a flood policy. But that's just part of living on the coast.
But it's crazy
more
too. But when areas where they don't have storms, they would get affected really hard. Like North Carolina, when that hurricane, so they got flooded really bad, and nobody expected that.
Yeah. Years ago, I actually worked a storm in North Carolina around Fort Bragg. Is hour and a half, 2 hours inland. It's pretty far inland, and yeah, same thing, flooding. It was. That's the one misconception that I think a lot of people have. They talk about flood insurance and they say, well, I'm not in a floodplain. I don't need insurance for flooding. But we have an example just north of here in Kirbyville, hour or so north.
Yeah.
It's a fairly elevated area, lots of hills, lots of runoff. But then just this last spring, they got a lot of rain all at once, and so many people flooded.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And that was a similar situation with Harvey. Harvey wasn't a full-blown hurricane when it hit us. It was a tropical storm. But what ended up hurting us was just day after day after day of rain, and there was just nowhere for all the water to go.
Yeah.
All the rivers and everything
Yeah.
had swollen.
It didn't know if I want to stay in Houston or come to Port Arthur and go back and forth, That
one was a freak storm for sure.
It was. I remember. I remember that during Harvey, my mom's house got flooded, then my brother's house got a little bit flooded, and then the water was actually maybe half an inch or an inch away from my slab, and all of a sudden it just stopped.
You got lucky on that one.
The only reason why I got water inside the house is because they had some guy in a truck just speeding on
pushing the water up.
Pretty much, you know what I mean? That's like, you know what, I'll take that.
yeah, you can't complain in that situation.
Yep. So I didn't mind. But okay, so how long you been doing this insurance business? Your 409 insurance.
409 insurance is still pretty fairly new. I am. It's a branding effort. So I write for one particular company, and I write home, auto, life insurance, commercial insurance, annuities. I have a bunch of different products that I offer.
Yeah.
And so 409 insurance is a marketing effort to make sure that people know that this face and this voice equals insurance for Southeast Texas.
Yeah.
And so it's been a good response so far. Southeast Texans really like things that are specific for Southeast Texas. So if you have something in your name that says Golden Triangle or Lamar or Southeast Texas, and it helps with brand recognition, name recognition.
Yeah,
so,
true.
Because if I'm just Brandon Hammock Insurance, then I sound just like every other Jim Smith Insurance and Jane Doe Insurance, and everybody else kind of bleeds together. So
yeah. That's the one thing I was debating when I started this podcast. Okay, sure. Well, at first when I started it, I wasn't sure what I was gonna really do about it. But then from there, I think it evolved more into like just helping out your everyday small business entrepreneur and all of that, and just be more local. But who knows? It might grow to be something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who knows? It's gonna evolve.
And be flexible with it.
Yeah.
We were talking about Joe Rogan earlier, right? The most successful broadcaster in our age. He started his podcast and it was just kind of a joke. It was kind of a fluke.
Yeah.
But they kept at it, and then 10 some odd years later, he's the most successful broadcaster in history. More so than any TV broadcaster or news anchor or anything like that. More eyeballs have watched however many thousands of hours of Joe Rogan interviews, and so love him or hate him as a person, but as a business owner and as a brand, he led the way. And now we've got however many thousands of different podcasts out there. But I feel like it's a great tool for everyone. You know, that for any industry, being able to get on a podcast, have a conversation like this, because that's what people want to see. They just want to hear everyday people having an everyday conversation versus a television commercial, you know, something highly polished and, you know, fake or not fake, but, you know, scripted and edited really heavily. People just want to be able to get to know who they're working with.
Exactly. So that's why I kind of created this.
Yeah.
And so far, I'm just on YouTube right now. I need to transfer all the podcasts I have done into Spotify, Apple Play, and I'm not sure where other areas as well too. But eventually, I'll get there. I need to go ahead and start doing that.
People don't realize how much work it is.
Oh, it is.
It's a lot of work.
Because I'm literally the person contacting all the guests.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then have everything set up, make sure everything's good, video, audio, make sure the time doesn't go over for the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got to edit. Then I got to put it on YouTube, and that's a long process as well too.
Absolutely. Well, I know all the others that, you know, have been on, a handful that I've talked to. Really appreciate all the work that you've done with it. So I was happy to come and talk about one of the most boring subjects in the world.
Yeah. But you know how cool people help out? By like, comment, subscribe. All right, guys?
Hey.
Yeah. All right. So I know we talked about that you were in construction and restoration business. So how has that helped you in the insurance world?
Well, because I've seen the other side of things. Most people, I think it's statistically, will make 2 claims in their whole life. You know, so maybe an auto claim and maybe a home claim. So something happens, excuse me, they get in a wreck. Hopefully you don't get into too many wrecks in your life, but it happens. And so when you have that happen, you call your adjuster, or you call your company, they call on an adjuster and take pictures, and they try to estimate the damages, and then, you know, you get a check for the damages, and then you go and get it repaired. Similar on the house side, it's just a little bit more complicated, because when you're repairing things, especially in a restoration situation, it's not like a regular contracting where, you know, you might pay a contractor to come and build you a new studio. Well, they're building from a clean slate, ground up. But if it's a restoration situation, like it flooded, now you have to rip out all of the old, you know, anything that got wet. You have to sanitize everything, run dehumidifiers through it, and then once everything's dry and sanitized and back down to where you can use that, it's a clean slate, then you can do the construction. So it's easier almost to just build something new, but we're not going to tear down our house every time we have, you know, a minor flood or a kitchen fire or something, and it lays smoke all over the house. So I know the process of what happens after an event, you know, a fire or a flood or whatever. And so I think my clients really appreciate that I know they haven't been through this before. So even though it's not my job to handle their process, handle their claim, I still kind of hold their hand and say, okay, we're going to call the adjuster together. We're going to file this claim together. When the adjuster comes back and gives you this estimate, they're going to, you know, explain everything that's there. But I can kind of tell you what to expect. And excuse me. And so, you know, that experience of being on the other side of the house, on being after the claim has already been made, I can bring that to my clients and be able to educate them on just what to expect and what's realistic. You know, when you have a kitchen fire, I'll just use that as an example. If you have a kitchen fire, you put out the fire, hopefully, or the fire department comes and, you know, hoses down your house, and then you got a big problem. And so from that point until you are moved back into your house could be a month or 2.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got to get everything that was damaged out of the house. You have to strip down or sanitize or, you know, decontaminate anything that got damaged from the fire.
Do you work with the inspectors as well too, or how's that?
No. As an agent, we're not really part of that process.
Okay.
So, you know, when you file the claim, your agent may help you just call the number and kind of tell you what to expect, but we're more of a guide in it. We're not part of the process. The adjuster works with the restoration contractor and then works with a rebuild contractor, and also, you know, any inspectors that might come out for, you know, city ordinances or things like that. So the adjusters really handle that part of the process. But me as an agent, because I came from that side, I try to help them just have realistic expectations of what's to happen. If I had never had that experience, I might just say, well, here's the 800 number, call the claims department, they'll handle it from there. And, you know, I may or may not talk to them until, you know, they're finished.
Yeah.
But because I kind of know what to expect, I tell them, hey, you know, like, take a bunch of pictures, get all the stuff that you want, you know, to be safe, you know, off to the side of the house. Start looking around to see if you can find a short-term place to stay so that you're not staying there in the house.
Yeah. Is it a good idea to have pictures of how your house currently is? The inside?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
As part of my packet, and it's kind of going above and beyond. It's not as if you need all this, but if you want to make your life easier in the event that you have a claim, it would be great to have an inventory of everything you own.
Okay.
So if you're bored on a Saturday and you've got nothing better to do,
take pictures.
take a picture of everything. And then if you have things that you really care about, you know, a TV, if you got the TV serial number, if you've got the refrigerator, you know, serial numbers and
you have to have
numbers.
you have to have all
You
that
don't
information?
have to have any of this. That's what I'm saying. It's above and beyond.
Yeah.
But by having it, you're more prepared than 90-something% of people. And you hope you never use it. It's kind of like insurance in general.
Yeah.
You hope you never have to use it. But if you have that inventory, then you were helping the adjuster do their
That's what I
job.
said, yeah.
And so anybody's going to appreciate that, because anytime you can make their job easier. Because if it's, you know, say it's not just a kitchen fire, but the house burns to the ground. How do you don't remember all the stuff you had. You just know, yeah, I had a couch. I think I bought it at, you know, Ashley Furniture 10 years ago. It was about this much. But if you have all of that ahead of time before anything bad happens, then at least they've got something to go off of.
Yeah, so a good tip would be have all your major receipts, major appliances receipts stored somewhere, fireproof.
Yeah, fireproof safes.
Yeah.
And I do a giveaway. You know, that's one. And it sounds silly and it sounds boring, but that's one of the things I do a giveaway. I give away fire extinguishers. I give away fireproof little boxes. You know, they don't hold a lot, but it'll hold your files.
Yeah.
You know, I give away road flares. You know, so and in fire extinguishers for vehicles. That's one that a lot of people don't have, is a fire extinguisher in their car.
Oh yeah. No.
Because you hope you never use it, but if you have it, you'll be really happy that you had it. Maybe you kept, you know, something that would completely ruin your car down to something that, you know, can be repaired with a couple of $100 or a couple $1,000.
Or you might have a friend or a family member whose car just going on flames. You just kind of help them out.
And you help them out, you know, or if you're driving down the road, or, you know, you're in the parking lot at a you know. See, I was a Boy Scout. So to me, it's just part of kind of the Boy Scout motto, which is be prepared.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of think of things in the worst case scenario and then work it backwards from there. Hey, what if the house burns to the ground? I mean, nothing's left but slab. What kind of coverage does your policy have? If it's, you know, your vehicle. Vehicles are one of the things that most people are underinsured with.
Yeah, because a lot of people think that if you're fully covered, that you're fully covered, but no, you might not be covered by. If somebody doesn't have insurance, then you might not be covered.
That's
for
true. And there's a lot to unpack there.
Uninsured motorists. There you go.
That's it. There's actually a lot to unpack in that statement. So with auto policies in particular, there's three parts of an auto policy. There's the liability, the uninsured motorist, and then the comprehensive and collision.
Yeah.
That's what most people call full coverage, is the comprehensive and collision. I don't use that term. I don't like that term because it gives people a false sense of security. They think, oh, well, I've got full coverage. Anything could happen and I'm good.
Yeah.
But the liability part of your policy is what pays out if you damage someone else's stuff.
Yeah, you're not covered.
That's the state required part of any insurance policy, is the liability. And what that covers is if you hit somebody and you damage their vehicle, or medical bills and that sort of thing get piled up, that first part of your policy is usually three numbers. It would be a 30, 60, 30, or 100, 200, 100.
Yeah.
So without seeing your policy, it's hard to say. This is just very general info, but that first part of your policy, the liability, is what protects you when you hit someone else, even if it's like, those like professional victims. Well, they'll pull up in front of you and slam on the brakes.
Oh,
Then you get the ticket, and if you get the ticket, then you're liable for that, and that's
Yeah.
what that liability covers. And so you want that part of your policy to have more than enough coverage, because a lot of people are riding around with $30,000 worth of coverage, the state minimum, $25,000 or $30,000 worth of coverage. I don't know about you, but the last time I bought a car was a lot more than $30,000.
I can understand now if you have like an old vehicle that you just don't care about. Like, okay, I was just gonna get the bare minimum.
And that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah.
They say, "Well, my car's not that worth that much. Give me the cheapest." But what they don't realize is that the liability has nothing to do with your car.
Yeah,
It's the other guy.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that at least the other person is covered. You don't care what happens to your vehicle, pretty much.
Right. But when people only have the state minimums, they only have that $25,000 or $30,000 worth of coverage.
Mm-hmm.
If they totaled someone else's car, they're personally liable for
Oh.
everything over that. So let's say it's a
Gotcha.
$30,000 and you hit a $50,000 car, total it out. Your insurance policy will pay out that $30,000, but then you have to come up with $20,000 to make up the difference.
Nah, I didn't know that.
That's
a good tip, guys. Look at
a
your
very
policy.
good- Sit down. Even if it's not with me, sit down with your agent and go over your liability limits on your coverage, because that's the one thing standing in between you and potential ruin.
Yeah.
One of the two main things that ruins people financially, family trees can be, your kids and grandkids. It could affect you massively.
Yeah.
Is a liability lawsuit or the death of a breadwinner. The main breadwinner
Oh, yeah.
dies. So if the liability lawsuit, if you hit someone and cause, $200,000 worth of damage. Maybe they're driving a $90,000 car, and then they've got $110,000 worth of medical bills. Where are you going to come up with $200,000 to cover that? That's what that liability is there for. So I look at everybody's policies. It's not like a sales thing. I'm not trying to make them get it, but it's.
But it's good to know. At least you know that you're aware of it. There's there's a possibility that you might have to pay out more.
And I don't know about you, but I can't just come up with $20,000, much less
Yeah.
100.
Yeah. And I guess that's why you when you buy a new highway, if you still have a mortgage or even a car loan, that's why you always gotta have full coverage.
And that's what when people say full coverage, they usually are talking about the comp and collision part of it, where the liability covers other people if you hit them. Your uninsured motorist covers you if somebody hits you and runs off. A hit and run situation, or they don't have insurance. There's according to DPS, 3 out of 5 drivers on the road either have no insurance or are underinsured.
Yeah.
So if they hit you and run off, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's what that uninsured motorist
Yeah.
is there for. But the comp and collision part that actually covers your vehicle when you have a loan, what the bank requires you to have, that comp and collision, what most people call full coverage, that's there for everything else.
Yeah, I got a crazy story.
Sure,
what happened
sure.
to me. So I was driving down Golfway, right? Going towards, let's say, Popeyes. You know where Popeyes is at?
Oh, yeah.
So a car was coming out from that car wash, going the opposite direction. Well, when he came out, apparently his pedal got stuck under the floor mat, and ended up coming into my lane, and I just knocked the rear tire off. He wasn't going nowhere, but that tire just came off. Boom! I'm like, man. But at the end, he didn't have no insurance, and the truck didn't have no insurance,
Yeah.
and it wasn't even his truck. It was just a friend's truck or vehicle, whatever. So I had to pay for it. Well, my insurance had to pay for it.
But you had uninsured motorist.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
yeah. I had to pay the deductible and
The
stuff like that.
deductible on it. Yeah.
But luckily, I worked at a paint shop, so they kind of helped me with the deductible and stuff like that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and it was just a front end collision, but I was able to paint the whole vehicle. And it came out nice though too.
Awesome,
It was a Honda
awesome.
Ridgeline, two-tone silver and dark blue, whatever. I had it for like 17 years. Everybody knew my truck around here,
Yeah.
but now with the new Toyota.
And, you know, and that's most people until you've had something happen to you or like somebody you know real well. You don't think about this stuff.
Yeah.
You just pay your bill every month. You think, okay, I'm good. And it's not until a situation they don't have insurance or you cause more damage than your policy covers. So I've got this one client, and you know, not mentioning names or any of the situation, but they had just liability coverage on their vehicle. So they had paid off the car. They said, we don't need the comp and collision because I paid it off. I don't have a note. The bank doesn't, you know, make you after that.
Yeah.
So he paid it off. The car's still worth like $30,000, $30,000 or
Oh,
$40,000.
yeah. If it's that worth that much, you want to have full coverage.
They weren't my client to begin with, but they, you know, that was the situation they were in. That was all they had. Had they been my client, I would have advised them before all of this happened, but you can't go back in time. So anyway, going down the highway, car pulls out in front of them, swerves, pulls out in front of them, they T-bone it. It's a Porsche Cayenne.
Oh.
Then they swerve off the road and hit a business. So there's damage to the vehicle, to the Cayenne, and to the business,
Yeah.
to the building itself. And their policy only covered $50,000 worth of damage. So they got in a situation that I try to warn people about all the time, that the vehicle damage was more than their liability coverage and the building damage was more than their liability coverage. So they themselves had to take care of the rest of it.
Man.
It's a scary thing until you've seen it. You know, I've always had more than enough liability coverage on my vehicles, even when I had older vehicles. But until I really got on this side of the business and started seeing these consistently, like, holy cow, how many people are riding around that don't have enough coverage? They don't know what they have.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, well, I got full coverage. I'm good. You know,
And you
it's not
don't
until
hear
something
it
happens.
in the news. You know what I mean? They don't in the news say, hey, just let you know this is going on. So you want to be fully covered.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you know, it's my deal is I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it's my goal to educate.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, doing podcasts like yours, I do presentations with you know, small groups. I'll come out and give them just kind of like an insurance 101, where it's just the basics of insurance, so they know what they're looking at when they're reading these policies.
Yeah.
And they can take that back to their agent, and their agent's going to go, oh wow, yeah, you do need more liability coverage, but they were too scared to say anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's because the people didn't have enough context to say, oh wow, you know, it happened to me, it happened to somebody else. They didn't have uninsured motorists, and they were in a hit and run accident. They didn't have flood coverage because they're not in a flood zone, and by then it's too late. You know, there's all sorts of scenarios that, if the policy had been there in place in the first place, if they had the right knowledge, they would have chose it.
Yeah.
But by then it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you have any like crazy insurance stories that you could tell us?
yeah. What's a good one? So, all right, a life insurance story.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I got one bad one and one good one. That way I
Okay.
can balance it out.
All right.
So, life insurance, you know, a lot of folks don't really understand life insurance. It's one of those things that, kind of like any insurance, you buy it and you hope you never use it. Well, life insurance is one you buy it and you don't get the benefit of it. You know, it's only your kids or your beneficiaries, whoever you name on the policy, after you die, they get paid out.
Yeah.
So, because it's so misunderstood, and people don't like talking about death, you know, it's a taboo subject, and you know, nobody wants to think about they're gonna die, but it's the one thing we're all guaranteed we're gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, at some point. So, you know, you insure your car, you insure your house, you insure your TV and your phone. You buy insurance for all kinds of stuff, but life insurance is probably the most important one, because you're able to protect your family and their lifestyle, their way of life, because you don't know when you're going to die. Nobody knows when or how or whatever that they're going to die. So, life insurance story. He was a plant worker. Guy worked out at one of the plants. Had been out there 10, 15 years. Had a good job. Made good money. Wife was a teacher. And so between the two of them, they made good money. Their house was nearly paid off. They were buying another house, so they were like 1 foot in this house. They were building another house. And he had coverage through work, but it's what's called an accidental death policy. So he didn't have a life insurance policy that he owned. He had one that the company bought that in case he dies at work, his beneficiary, his spouse, would receive like 2.5 times his salary or something like that. So they're usually really good policies for people who are in really dangerous, jobs, because let's face it, plant work can be dangerous.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a welder or you work in the office, stuff still happens or can happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they thought they were covered. But in their policy, in that accidental death, and this was the key, is that he thought, oh, well, I'm covered. Never sat down and looked over all of the policy to see what it is, what were the exclusions, all that kind of stuff. They didn't know to do that until after the fact. So the sad part is, he has some sort of an aneurysm or a seizure or something where wife woke up in the middle of the night, he's having an issue, they bring him to the hospital, like a week later he's dead.
Oh, wow.
They say, no problem, we've got life insurance. Well, they get into the policy. It was an accidental death policy. He died of natural causes, not of an accident at work. So he didn't have any coverage. They didn't have a policy to themselves where, they could pay for things out of that policy. It was just accidental death. So, and he may have, been offered it at work and opted out of a true life insurance policy. But for whatever reason, he only had this accidental death. So there was no payout. Couldn't build the house. They had this house halfway built. It was financed to the hilt. They had their original mortgage. They were almost done with it, but there's these 2 payments, and they go from a 2-income household, and he's making really good money. And teachers, we all know teachers don't get paid enough.
Yeah.
So on a teacher's salary, there was really no way she could afford a mortgage and another mortgage, and then the car notes and all the other stuff. I think they had a lake house or a beach house, but they had a secondary, house and stuff. So long and the short of it, she had to sell stuff to pay for his funeral. So just to get him into the ground, they didn't have, nobody. I don't know if you know. Do you have any idea like how much the average funeral costs these days?
I really don't know.
Right?
Is it 10? I don't know. Do you know?
That's a good baseline.
Okay.
So
10.
it depending on if you get cremated or if you get buried, and then what type of casket you have, and if you've got the plots already paid for, and the headstone, and the service, and flowers, and all the stuff that goes into doing a funeral, it can easily get to $15,000-$20,000. So
expensive.
we don't really see too many, like that. But when somebody dies, you really want to honor them as best as you can.
Yeah.
And but unfortunately, they were in a situation where they couldn't. So they scraped money together, sold some stuff. They were able to pay for that, but she ended up having to sell the house back to the builder. They weren't able to build that house. They stayed in the original house, and so it's just real tragic. That it's bad enough that he died. You lose your partner, you lose your husband, your wife, your whatever, but then for their lives just drastically changed overnight. And because the policy he had in place, he didn't own that policy. It wasn't his, it was the company's, and it wasn't a policy that paid out under all scenarios. It was just if he died at work. He thought he was good. He thought he was covered, and tragically, they had no coverage.
Yeah.
And so
check your policy, guys.
check your policy. Sit down. Well, and that's the thing is, a lot of times when it's through work, And it doesn't have to be just a plant. You know, a lot of offices and a lot of businesses do offer a group term, you know, policy. And so, but most people, it's just when you're filling out your paperwork, you check a box, and all you know is that okay, they take out, you know, $10 or $12 or something a paycheck, and I've got $50,000 worth of coverage, or 5,000, or 500,000, or whatever the policy is. But rarely does anyone get a printout, look at it, and see what it covers and what it doesn't cover. If it covers accidental death, that makes sense. Some of them have exclusions. So depending on how the policy is written, it could be that, you know, that they will exclude for pre-existing conditions. Oh, well, you had a heart condition and you know, you didn't disclose that.
Yeah.
So the payout isn't there. It's complicated, but it's not. There's a big difference between what you could buy, you know, at what you could get at work, or what you might get through like a bank or a credit union, or you buy off of a late night infomercial or something. The guaranteed, you know, life insurance policies, versus a policy that you actually own yourself, that was crafted for you in particular, where you did all the medical underwriting up front, where they'll come in and draw some blood and, you know, do medical background checks on you, check in with your doctors and that kind of stuff, look at your medical records, and craft a policy that's based just for you, instead of a group policy, which is kind of a check in the box.
Yeah.
So anyway, I told you I had a good one too.
Don't want to get the people depressed out here.
It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all doom and gloom. But I mean, it's a serious thing, you know, and it's something nobody wants to talk about.
Especially if, like you said, if they're married, you got kids and stuff like that.
It's tragic.
Yeah, maybe if you're by yourself, you know what I mean, I guess a little, not too worried about it, but still gotta have somebody to bury you, I guess.
That's it. And it's still, there's still expenses associated with it. Anytime you have a debt, you know, if you've got say you're completely single, you're 25 and you're single, you still, if you have a house, you've got a mortgage, you've got car payments, you know, you've got all these expenses that have been associated with you. Where does that go when you die? You know, your parents or your brother or whoever you have as a beneficiary in your will, and that's another thing. Everybody get a will now.
Something I need to do.
Even if you don't have kids or anything, you want these. I have this chart that I show my clients when I do a review with them, that shows all of the different bricks of what I call the financial house. And, you know, insurance for your property and casualty, your cars and your house and all that kind of stuff, that's one of the bricks. And life insurance or health insurance is one of the bricks. Life insurance is another, and disability insurance is another. All of these different things, if any of them, if you have an event in any of them, if you get disabled and you can't work anymore, oh yeah, you might get a disability check from the government, but is that really enough to live?
Yeah.
You know, that's what that insurance is there for. Just like with health insurance, if you have catastrophic health insurance for those worst case scenarios to cover you if you get massively sick, if you get diagnosed with cancer, if you know, all the stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but that's what insurance is there for, is to take that risk off of you and put it onto the insurance company's back. But anyway, on that risk or on that financial foundation, wills is one that I hound people about all the time. Most people don't get, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of people don't get a will until they have a house and or until they have kids and get married and all of these things, or until they're getting later in life. But even young, you know, healthy people get a will. It's a couple $100. You know, you sit down with a good attorney, they'll help you, you know, walk through it. But then that way you've got all of your wishes laid out, including who handles your medical, you know, your medical power of attorney. If you end up as a vegetable, who's going to make the decision if they pull the plug or not?
Yeah.
You know, or where your stuff goes, you know, and where your debts go. Anyway, good story. I told you I'd give you a good one.
All right.
A good example of what, you know, a good life insurance policy could do. So we have a client in Jasper. He was a tugboat captain, you know, made pretty good money, but he's no millionaire or anything, you know, but every year They were real frugal, and they saved their money and they invested their money so that by the time they were getting into their golden years, into their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they had built up a nice little nest egg. Along with that, he had jam-packed a life insurance policy. So when he passed, his wife, who was a stay-at-home, housemaker, homemaker, she hadn't worked since she was 16 years old. Hadn't worked in 40, 50 years, right? Hadn't worked all her life. Didn't pump her own gas. Didn't pay the bills. He took care of everything. Well, when he passed, she was just absolutely freaking, just lost, because she's sitting here going, wait a minute, I don't have any work experience. How am I going to earn any money? What am I going to do? Turned out he had a life insurance policy set in place, and his will dictated that the policy would pay out, and then every month his attorney up there in Jasper, would pay the bills. So the light bills and the car insurance and pay for mechanics and pay for the grass cutting guy, so that she could continue to live her lifestyle even after her husband had passed. And it was all because every month he plugged away a couple $100s into a life insurance policy, and the payout was $2.5 million.
Oh wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And because he had locked it in when he was young, when he was in his 20s or 30s or something. But, the thing about life insurance is the younger you get it, you lock in a rate based on your health today and your age today. If you wait until you're 60 to buy one, it may be 3, 4, 5 times more than it would be if you'd have bought it back when you were in your 20s and you were healthy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that to me, it's one of the best. It's almost like a fairy tale, It's like I gave a presentation to a group of women business owners, and they were all just like doughy-eyed, like, why didn't my husband do that for me?
Or the husband are like, hey, you better get insurance.
You better, yeah. And so, but it's the one thing you buy that you don't get the benefit from. I mean, you sleep better at night because you know that nothing, no matter what happens, if you get hit by a bus or die of cancer or whatever, your family's taken care of.
Yeah.
And so I know I've got 3 kids. I used to stress a lot more than I did until I really maxed out those funds, to where I know that, it's not going to replace the person. It can't replace that emotional state and, or the love and the relationship they had, but it certainly can help from just derailing a whole family's, way of life, where they might have had a nice house or 2 houses, like the other
previous,
couple.
Yeah.
And they got to sell everything and move into an apartment or something, that's what it's really there for, is to protect a style, your way of life, your what would you call it? Your standard of living.
Yeah.
It's ensuring your standard of living, just like your auto insurance is ensuring your vehicle from, a wreck or something. It'll get put back together, or your home insurance is protecting it. If a fire burns it down, you'll get another house. Well, you can't replace a person, but you can replace their income.
Yeah, we all hate insurance, but it's there for a reason. So I was gonna ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see for United Insurance?
5 years. Well, like I said, my goal, I am doing my best to put myself out there to help as many people as possible.
Because you're on Facebook. That's where I've seen you.
Yeah.
And I think you said you got a website as well too.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, the Facebook. They're all using the same handle. So I got 409 Insurance for everywhere.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and link that in the box. All right, guys, check it out.
But yeah, so those are all meant to be educational.
Yeah.
Will
Will you start thinking about doing like a little classes, I guess.
Yeah,
know,
that's
and-
the I do presentations where
Okay,
I'll do like
presentation.
a lunch and learn type thing.
Okay.
Where folks will come in, I tell them bring your policies, we'll sit down, and I do just kind of a quick overview of
Okay.
like let's talk about what all these terms
And it's like a
mean.
free of charge. So,
Yeah. No, it's really just the more people that it's kind of like that whole thing where you light a candle and then somebody else goes out and lights another candle and more and more and more. The more you can spread knowledge, then people are better informed consumers.
Yeah.
And we're not the cheapest. When it comes to insurance, we're not the cheapest company. And so there's a lot of people that I can't help them because they need a cheaper policy or
Yeah.
something. But I can still help them by helping them to know what they need to be looking for.
Yeah.
So even if they go to one of our competitors or one of the big national companies, I won't name names, but ones with talking
But
animals
I call
or
it at the same
things
time,
like that.
you being like straightforward with them, and
Right.
they might appreciate that. Then who knows, later on they might come back to you.
Yeah, when their finances, get to where we're not the most expensive. I'm not trying to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
it sound like we're unattainable or anything like that. But I get calls all the time. Hey, I need give me just the cheapest you can, and so I'll try to walk them through. Well, what that really means. What you do when you do that is you are taking on the risk, and the whole point of insurance is to take the risk off of your back and put it onto the companies. If you were independently wealthy, you might not have insurance because you're like, this house could burn to the ground and I'll just build another one because I got that much cash sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
But even plenty of, massively wealthy people, they still buy insurance because they see that those premiums that you're paying every month, that little bit that you're putting in, if anything were to happen, you've easily gotten your money back because you didn't have to shell out $10,000 or $200,000 if it's a house. You
Yeah.
know, it's one of the most misunderstood but necessary products out there. Insurance is a few hundred years old. It started back actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Back when ships were being sent over to the New World. The merchants that would get together and put these ships to stock it full of goods and send it to the Americas, they wanted to make sure that they got their money's worth. So there was this group of investors that would come in and bet that it's going to make it back. They all bet that it might not. And
It was just gambling.
It is, and that's what I hate. I don't like really pushing that, but that's really what it is. At the end of the day, you're taking the gamble. There's always a gamble.
Yeah.
It's either that you're gambling that, well, I'm not going to get in a wreck, or my house isn't going to get hit by a tornado or a hurricane or whatever, or I'm not going to die. People take that gamble all the time.
Yeah.
But you're taking that risk and you're putting it on into the pool where everybody's taking a little bit of that risk out.
Yeah.
And so when we see prices rise, a lot of people think, well, why are you making my bill go up? And putting it into a pool. So we'll use easy numbers, but say there's 100 of us. If we all chip in $1, then now there's $100 sitting in a pot, right?
Yeah.
So if I have $100 loss, I'll take the pot, and then we start over again. And so insurance is so heavily regulated, there can never only be just enough to handle one claim. You have to have that. The insurance company has to have enough money and investments around to be able to handle claims. And so when rates go up, people think, well, why are you picking on me? I haven't had any wrecks, or I'm a good driver, or I haven't made any claims on my house. But it's not that the insurance company is picking on you necessarily. It's that there's either not enough people in that pool, or just the price of rebuilding stuff has gone up. And that's what we've really seen with home prices.
Yeah, with
lately.
everything,
Yeah.
automotive insurance, labor for the mechanics, or even the body repair shops and stuff. Just everything just gone up.
And it's a combination of stuff, Inflation's kind of eating the dollar away every day. Our dollar's not worth as much as it was. And then on top of that, if the price of the materials themselves go up, well, that cost has got to go somewhere. Best example I give all the time: fender benders. right? Used to be the most common thing, you know, and still is fairly common, but it's one of the most common accidents in a vehicle. You bump into somebody or you back into a pole or a mailbox or something like that. Puts a little ding in your fender. Years ago, or in your bumper. Years ago, when cars were made of metal, you could bring it to a body shop, they could pull it out, they might do a little buffing, but it was more or less good as new. Now the cars are mostly plastic, you know, around the fender wells or aluminum or right, really lightweight metals that don't pop back. And there's sensors and cameras and lights in 3 different directions.
Electrical components and stuff.
And every time you do something, you have to reprogram the computer, right? So or you can change the battery and completely screw up your car, you know, to where they got to keep the juice going. But so something that used to be maybe a couple of hours worth of body shop work, and you know you're back on the road, is now they'll replace the whole front end component or something.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's just one small example of how something that used to be very easy, there was this whole industry of the body shop, you know, built up around it. Now, rather than repairing that component, they'll just take it off and put on another one. So what used to be a couple $100 repair might be $5,000 or something now to replace a whole front end, or you know, things of that nature.
Yeah.
You know, building materials is a really big one for homes, where a couple of years ago when I was still a contractor, I mean, you could buy a 2x4 for $1.25, $1.50. If you buy in bulk, maybe down to around $1, something like that. And I mean, now it's $4 or $5 sometimes, you know, depending on the fluctuation of the market. That's just the cost of repairs. And so a lot of times people will get their home insurance bill and say, wait a minute, you say that my house is worth $200,000, but I know it's only worth, I paid $100 for it. But it's not the cost of what you bought it for or what it might sell on the market for. It's what would it take to replace it if it burns down.
It's material and labor.
It's material, labor, and then accounting for if it's something like a hurricane where everybody has the same damage all at the same time.
Yeah.
Now everybody needs that same 2x4. And if it was already $4 and then there's a shortage and it jumps up even $1 or 50 cents or something, multiply that out by however many thousand houses and, you know, thousands of board feet. And it's the most complicated algorithm to figure out insurance rates.
Yeah.
It's way above my head, way above my pay grade, you know. NASA level, you know, mathematicians called actuaries are the ones that actually come up with these rates. It's not as if we as agents have like a list somewhere that we're just picking from. Like, oh, okay, you've got a 2020 Ford F-150. It's going to cost this much.
Oh.
Each rate is based on you and the area around it and 100 other factors.
Okay, so you guys are not just throwing darts.
We're not just throwing darts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Making sure. All right. So any last words for the audience? You gave a lot of good tips, though. But
I try to. You know, it's a subject that can get. It's easy to get down in the weeds because it is so complex. It's simple and it's complex at the same time. That one question that a client would ask me might lead me to ask them 3 more questions or something like that. So it can get kind of complicated. But I would say, as far as, you know, just things I would want folks to know is that, you know, be on the lookout. I release videos. I try to, like I said, put myself out there and be as educational as possible, because there's an old saying that, you know, you get what you want out of life by helping as many people get what they want. Mm-hmm. And so it's a giving mentality where the more people I can educate and just answer questions and be in the community, helping them to learn about this boring subject that nobody wants to know anything
it's boring
about.
But until you need it,
and then it's the most important thing, you know. I personally have been wiped out twice. 2 hurricanes, I've been completely wiped out. So I know what it's like. Mm-hmm. I know what it's like to literally, it's the clothes on your back and what you were able to grab in a truck before you evacuated and come back and the house is ruined. Mm-hmm. So I know what that feeling is like, and I know that if it weren't for the right policy in place, you know, would have been completely destitute, So, anywho, yeah. As far as parting words, I guess just meet with me. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll help walk over look over your policies, or catch me at one of these events that we're doing where we're just giving. It's general advice. I don't
And these
give
events,
specific information.
and these events were like, what kind of events?
Like I'll do something at restaurants sometimes, coffee shops.
Okay.
Businesses will have me come and talk to their employees. So if you've got a group of like 6 employees or more, I'll come and talk. And it's just a quick little presentation, but it gives them an overview of what all these different insurance policies cover, what they don't, and then I usually give about 15-20 minutes or so to just answer specific questions. People will bring their policies, and I'll say, okay, well, this is what this means, this is what this means, and just try to help them navigate it, because most of us are, most people out there, they just get the bill and they pay it, and they don't really know what's in it until they need it, and then by then it's it's too late. So make sure that you've got the right coverage in place before you need it.
All right. Well, one last thing I want to say, just appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, likewise.
And, you know what I mean? And I see both our future in 5 years being very bright. That's what I say.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, guys. If you guys like what we've seen, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and check out Brandon at 409 Insurance. All right, guys. Let him help you guys out. All right. Peace out. Bye.